All right, welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host, and I don't know if I've ever had a sadder intro to this podcast since the first day I recorded this podcast, with an idea and a dream and a hope to talk about the New York Giants as a team that can get us excited, can provide us the joy of what it's like to have your football team be a good team that's exciting and wins football games and gives you hope of fun playoff memories with your family, with your friends, watching the team. Things we've all experienced as a fan, or not all of us, but most of us who listen to this podcast. Some in 2011, 07, some all the way back, 90, 86. Some people, have been watching this team for even longer than we can even fathom, Nick. We hear about it all the time. At least I get some DMs from older fans, and shout out to you guys. But I don't know how this is a lower rock bottom for me since my fanhood, Nick, because you could compare it to last year, but it's not remotely the same. Last year, their expectations, they had won a playoff game. I could reason with myself and look at it, rose-colored glasses, Nick, and say, okay, well, it's one game. They still have a good team. They made improvements in the offseason. They can have a season. This year, it's harder to get yourself to that side of things, despite the improvements they've made on the roster, because of one reason at this point. But, this is where we're at as a fan base. It's crazy, Nick, that we've had back-to-back week ones like this, though. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be another fan of another team at this point. So maybe it's bad for other teams as well. But I don't know, man. Where do you want to start? It's rough.
To start, what did the Giants do well in this game? It's unfortunate. We saw the defense come up with that fumble early on. Nice play by Drew Phillips, had that sack by Dexter Lawrence. It seemed like that was the only pressure the New York Giants ended up getting on Sam Darnold, who carved them up outside the numbers, inside the numbers. KOC, man, Kevin O'Connell called an excellent game, out-coached the heck out of Brian Daboll. Daniel Jones, look, I texted you during the game. This is one of the worst. And this is saying a lot. This is one of the worst I've seen Daniel Jones. We've had a lot of bad Daniel Jones experience over the last 6 years or so. And this was one of the worst I've seen him. He looked incredibly uncomfortable back there. His timing was wildly off. There were times, and I'm going to have to substantiate a lot of this on the tape. There were times where it looked like he was looking towards the progression side, and there was an open receiver right in front of him at the sticks. A lot of the times it was Wan'Dale Robinson, and he was looking for something else. Maybe that is the tug of war match that he's having right now in his mind, where he's trying to be more explosive, and he thought something would come up down the field, and he was holding on to the football too long instead of settling for what he could take. And he's just not necessarily processing what the defense is doing quick enough to figure out, I need to hit that right there, because what I'm hoping for is not going to materialize over the next, milliseconds. I'm a little unsure, but this is one of the worst I've seen him, though. I have to say. And it's just, again, it's a low point. Thought it couldn't get much lower than week one last year, punched right in the mouth, but here's another touchdown-less game at home. And this one against the team that has Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback. So what's the excuse, man?
A new defensive coordinator and question marks on that defense as well.
Yeah, man.
And to not score a touchdown at home against a defense like that, you do it against, San Fran, you get matched up like that or something like that. It's understandable to some degree. To do it like this at home against that opponent, an opponent that they, were made. This is what made Daniel Jones famous for his contract. This is what guaranteed him that. This is what led us down this path. If the Giants don't win that playoff game, I don't know what they would have done that offseason, but the pressure to continue to roll forward with this wouldn't have been as high. I know that from ownership and from fans. And this is what propelled it. And then just, years later, it's where we're at now. There's a lot to get to there. I want to touch on something you said on the defense. I was thinking about it, Nick, and I was thinking about some of the stops they made early, the Dexter Lawrence pressure, even that interception in the middle of the game, but just some of the stops they made in the red zone after turning it over on short fields, things of that nature. It brings me back to what you said a lot this offseason. We're not going to get to know, and I don't think we'll see it on the film. We won't know for sure, but we'll see it on the film, Nick, if this pass rush was as bad as it seems like they were. But we're not going to get to know in a lot of these games because of what you said throughout the offseason, which is when you fall behind 14-3 like this, your pass rush is non-existent. The Vikings don't have to get themselves in tough positions on offensive side of the ball because they have such a cushion, and because they can rely on their defense coming up with a stop every single time. And so we might have more games like this, and it may be weird and tough to evaluate the progression of this pass rush. Was the investment worth it? It's just like the wide receiver situation on this team for the last 5 years. It's very tough to evaluate. Are these guys progressing? Can they be weapons if given the right situation? And it's going to, and it's something that I was thinking about in this game specifically. And I don't know, I guess we'll wait for the tape, but what are your thoughts on that?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And there was like one moment where we were like, oh, Brian Burns, there it was. It was an inside spin move where he went right into the pocket, hit Sam Darnold. Credit to Darnold, he got rid of the football, but it wasn't a sack or anything like that. And we saw how much success the Vikings were having on the ground. I mean, there was a 2-play consecutive plays with Aaron Jones where he rushed for like 31 yards right before, I believe it was right before the Justin Jefferson, or no, the Jalen Naylor touchdown where Justin Jefferson was the decoy. And the crappy thing about it is the Giants actually got a stop on that drive. Right. The Giants are down 14-3 on that drive to start the second half. They have no hope at this point. Everybody's just feeling like absolute crap, right? And what happens? The Giants get them in a 3rd and long, and they end up coming up with that stop. Kayvon Thibodeau gets called for the face mask. And 3 plays later, the Vikings are scoring a touchdown to go up 21-3. And it's just air sucked out of the building at that point.
Sucked out of the building for sure, but it really doesn't matter if they had not the stop there or not. The offense was giving the Giants nothing to work with in this game, despite plenty of opportunities, including, I think, as you mentioned or someone else mentioned, some of the only points the Giants scored in this game, half the points, were off of a turnover by the opposing team's offense. So it wasn't anything the offense did. Malik Nabers was on the field. We were hoping he would turn things around. I think he did pretty well, the best he could, but it really centers back. And at this point, you have to talk about it. It doesn't matter if you feel like you've heard it too much. It's the most important thing to talk about on the team. It's the biggest reason why what happened today happened. And what's something about, and what I'm talking about, Nick, is what you said a little bit earlier, which is this is the most uncomfortable I've ever seen Daniel Jones look in the pocket. Call it the injury, call it the rust, call it whatever the hell you want. But this is how he looked before the injury last year in games against Seattle and Miami. This is exactly how he looked in those games. And that was before the injury. So the injury rust thing doesn't really add up there. What it really seems like is this quarterback has no confidence left. He has lost the confidence in himself. He is really, 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 as they used to say about Eli, man, what did they used to say about him? What was the knock on him before he broke out, Eli? Skittish was the word they used in the pocket. Sorry.
Skittish.
I'll let you get there. Yeah, skittish was the word they used about Eli.
And there were a lot of words they used about Eli.
There were a lot of words, but there were moments where you worried, oh no, is Eli going down this path? And then he broke out. But with Jones, it's almost a regression to this point, to what we saw today. This was just no confidence at all. I mean, there was one good pass the entire game, right? Am I missing something? And by good pass, I'm including like a 6-yard underneath throw if the ball's on money. Those 6-yard passes were nightmare. It was like watching a car wreck every single time he dropped back to throw the football today. I've never seen a more helpless drop back on a consistent basis than what the Giants had today at the quarterback position, whatever you want to call it. And the craziest part about it, Nick, was, and I was right about this, and we'll see if it plays out, I was more worried about the run blocking than the pass blocking. I said that on a podcast yesterday or the day before. And it kind of played out that way. The pass blocking was pretty adequate from what we've seen.
Until like this late in the game when
once it's like pinning their ears back. And your peers are back. Don't even blame it on the O-line there. As Justin Pugh said yesterday on Twitter, too many fans have no idea what they're watching and think that every sack is the O-line's fault. But, in that situation, of course, but at the beginning of the game, but the run blocking, man, it's going to be a problem all year. And I haven't seen it, but I am a little concerned because, look, Daniel Jones splits throughout his career, Nick, with Saquon on the field and without Saquon on the field are pretty monstrous from what I'm understanding, but I have to look that up and double check. And you could say, oh, then that meant Saquon was valuable. Or you could just say Daniel Jones needs everything he can really get to help him get to a baseline level of play. And he's going to have to find confidence. Like, it's simple as that. He can't look like that again and keep starting because they won't start him if he looks like that again.
And everybody else around him needs to play. Like, there's no room for error for the offensive line, for the wide receivers, and for the coaching staff when you have a quarterback who is in the bottom 4th of starting quarterbacks in the National Football League.
I wouldn't look at it like that, Nick, because I know what you're saying, but I'm going to look at it more like this, because like instead of like the ranking of where they are, let's just look at it like, what did he put on the football field today? He was really inaccurate underneath. His timing was way off. He was completely unconfident in the pocket at almost all times. He stepped into sacks twice. He had no management or feel at all. The ball placement wasn't good at any point. He attempted one pass 20+ yards. Like, that's not like a ranking of quarterback. That's like you can't play on the field. If you do that again, you should be benched. And I was wondering that. I was going to text you about this. Like in hockey, when a player looks rattled, the goalie looks rattled, they pull him in hockey, right? But he comes back in the next game. It's fine. It's just doesn't mean we lost faith in you. We're not confident. We can't think of doing something like this. You give him a break. It's not his day. You take him off the field or the ice in that regard, and you put in the backup. The Giants didn't do that, dude. We went into the fourth quarter with 1:10 left, and the game completely over. And Brian Daboll put Daniel Jones back out there with a $25 million injury guarantee looming over him. And that was a moment where I just knew Brian Daboll is a Brian Daboll. This is like the Dory Jackson thing. You're going to consider not putting a Dory Jackson on punt returns after he injured himself 2 years ago. No, I'm still doing it the same exact way. It's that stubbornness. It's that I'm not going to be willing to bend. I know more than you. It could haunt them. He got sacked during that 1:10, dude. He went to the ground. Like it's insane thing to do. We saw one hit on Jordan Love and he has an injury. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's rough, man. And I'm not insinuating anything about, just because he's the bottom. I'm just saying that
no, I know
Daniel Jones being as bad, performing as poorly as he performed, puts such a burden on the rest of the roster to make this team competitive. Like he couldn't even keep the offense on script with simple concepts, quick game concepts to half field, high low type of concepts on a half field side. Like just read this one player who is in conflict, this one defender who is in conflict. This is stuff we've seen Daniel Jones do a lot throughout his career.
Right.
And look, we've been objective with Daniel Jones this entire time. Daniel Jones is not a good starting quarterback in the National Football League, and that is putting it lightly. But today, what we saw was an absolute disaster out there. That was like Zach Wilson type of disaster. Yeah, it was really
no
bad.
Way to look at it, especially when you consider, oh, wait a second, we can't even blame it on the offensive line pass protection until the very end of the game when the defense is just pinning their ears back, and that happens to every quarterback in every situation at that point.
And that's excusing the pick six too. Like I'm even like
picks. The pick six.
Yeah,
I thought the pick six is just a classic Jones. Like he gives you, this is the other thing about Jones now. He gives you, he's back to 2019 version where he gives you these bonehead mistakes in the middle of a game that could flip a whole game if they were actually competitive. Like that swing right there, that pick six. And look, you could say it's the play call's fault. Why would you call that? Jones has got to be faster, dude. It's so slow with him. It's bam, bam, bam. The body's moving so slow. And then he doesn't even have any instinct at all of like reactionary, the natural reactionary athletic feel to know, oh shit, I got to change the trajectory on this throw and get this shit over that linebacker. He throws it right on a line to the edge guy where he doesn't even have to jump. It's just in his hands for a pick six. It's beyond bad. And it's inexplicably bad.
Absolutely.
From an athleticism standpoint.
Absolutely. Now remove that play. Say that play doesn't even happen and the Giants just end up punting. It was still the worst performance. That's my point.
Right.
It's because he couldn't even keep the freaking offense on script. He couldn't even do the most simple things that we've seen him execute. You can make the excuses. It's his injury. I'm done with all of that. The pressure was on him in this game. This is a spot against a team that is beatable. You need to win this football game. We all know how the 2023 season started, and the Giants just started the season essentially the same way. They didn't get shut out. They scored 6 points. Whoop de freaking do. They still did not score a touchdown. And now we're sitting here again, 0-1, absolutely embarrassed. And we're going to have to play Washington next week. That's another very winnable football game. But I have no confidence in this team right now for Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones to right the ship offensively. And that's not even starting with the defense, man. The defense couldn't cover anybody out there.
Yeah, defense actually had a few stops though early, at least. Like when we go back and watch the tape, defense had a few series. The offense had no successful series the entire game. The defense, you could say, had a successful series here, a forced fumble here, a stop in the red zone here, just things that were successful that they did. And that's why I don't really. I mean, look, they were horrible too, but when your offense doesn't do one good thing and in a single game, and you have all those opportunities, it's tough. And like you said, it's interesting when it comes to where they're at with that, with what went down on the field. But I think the other thing is, it's like, you could say you're right. If you took away that pick six he threw, it would still be probably one of the worst games, if not the worst of his career. Because with the exception of that one intermediate shot to Nabers, which was nice, I can't remember a single pass that was even good in this game or even remotely close to passable. But then there was also the red zone interception. I mean, that one, I have no idea what the explanation could be on that one. Because if you look at the dots, Doug Analytics, did you see him put the dots tweet up? I mean, if you watch that on the dots, that decision to throw that football there, it's alarming. It's a train wreck, as I described it earlier.
What I think Daniel Jones was thinking, and he's just not that accurate, and he was very inaccurate today, was he saw Josh Metellus, who was a very talented player, mind you. He saw Josh Metellus drop to that middle hook. She had two guys on the line of scrimmage. One dropped to the curl flat. The other one dropped to the middle hook. And that created a throwing window right in front of Daniel Jones for that dig to Darius Slayton against Harrison Smith, who was a little bit high and outside of him. So he thought he was going to put a back shoulder to Darius Slayton to avoid Josh Metellus. But Harrison Smith was baiting it the entire time. Harrison Smith was right on top of it. That ball still needed to be a little bit bit in front of Darius Slayton, or at least on the numbers and not behind Darius Slayton. I'm not sure if Jones thought Slayton was going to sit with that specific coverage with Metellus flowing over. I'm honestly unsure, but I think that's why Jones put it back shoulder. But again, man, like it's hard to even give him the benefit of the doubt after that performance because he missed a lot of easy throws. He was skipping balls into them. And also
they were skip throws. They were Donovan McNabb skip throws.
There were certainly skip throws, and there were also throws where the receiver was open and the receiver had to adjust and leave their feet.
As always.
And then once they hit the deck, they're already getting tackled instead of catching it in stride and maximizing yak.
Yeah, that's been a staple of Daniel Jones. People haven't really given it enough credit, but the tape has shown that for a long time from a ball placement standpoint. But, even if I'm giving him credit for everything you said in that, and we don't know what his decision was on that throw, at that point in that tight confined space, you know that you have tendencies that defensive backs have quite frankly been picking up on tape lately. The Seahawks pick 6 last year on Monday Night Football. The way that the 49ers D-backs played Jones. These are some of his most recent games. Miami, and they're playing a lot of those trap coverages against you now because it looked to me, and we'll see it on tape, but to me, it looked like when you're playing Madden, you make the decision beforehand, you're going to throw to a certain button, and then you just kind of do your drop back and you don't really do anything. You just kind of throw that button. I'm happy to hear that it might not be that. And, there's a little more that went into that, but the way it looked to me was just an inexplicable decision to make that pass in the red zone.
Yeah. Oh, on the red zone. Yeah.
The red zone interception I'm talking about. Yeah.
I think he saw those two guys bail and he was like, okay, the blitz is not coming. Oh, the middle of the field is open. I know Slayton is going to be there. And with Jones, it's like, okay, like that's happening in a very short amount of time. Now, during that short amount of time, he's making that decision to pull the trigger. But I think I just think the ball placement was off and a little bit too far to the inside where Harrison Smith made a very good play on it. Again, the film will substantiate it. But either way, man, it was just a rough performance to watch. Giants,
and he'll have to be better than that. And, it's one game. I would hope this is going to be his worst game of the year, Daniel Jones. That's the only hope we can have because, like you said, it's not the same as the Cowboys last year. The Cowboys were a good team. They were a playoff team. They were a division winner, and some people even viewed them as a contender. The Vikings are a team that were supposed to be in the same position as the Giants, Nick. Sam Darnold was their starting quarterback. And look, I've heard people say, and I think there's some validity to it, and you mentioned it earlier, how Kevin O'Connell outcoached Sam Darnold. I'm sorry, Kevin outcoached Brian Daboll. And look at what he's been able to do with Sam Darnold. And they have Justin Jefferson. We have Malik Nabers. I think the difference is he did outcoach him. Maybe his system is better, but that's not the whole story. That's kind of the point. People will look at it and be like, I have rankings of players. This guy's in this bucket. This guy's in this bucket. There's so much more nuance to it. Even if you believe that Darnold and Jones are in the same bucket today, they weren't in even remote. There's so much separating them. You can't even see them. How far their play on the field was from a ball placement standpoint, from a confidence standpoint, pocket management, feel, everything that goes into playing quarterback. The version of Daniel Jones today was nowhere near the version of Sam Darnold. If you put Daniel Jones on the Vikings today, I got news for you. Kevin O'Connell wasn't torching the Giants. I can tell you that with certainty. Now, a good version of Jones, sure, but this version of Jones, this level, this lack of confidence that he played with today, you can't. And that's the thing, Nick. Like, if it doesn't turn around fast, how many games do they repeat this? There's not going to be many. Like, he got to get his confidence back within next week, essentially. And he's got a great defense to do it against Washington. It's a perfect matchup for him.
It is, man. And I'll retract that statement about Daboll getting significantly outcoached by KOC. If we watch the tape, and there are open receivers. Now, judging just without watching the tape, it's easy to say Daboll had a terrible game, right? And that's my assumption. But we also know Daniel Jones had a terrible game. So who's to say that there were not open receivers down the field where that we could not see that the tape could show, just because Daniel Jones just wasn't finding them. That's at least a plausible reality. But again, man, it also just didn't seem like they couldn't really get anything going on the ground. It was of this uber conservative nature to Daboll, but we'll have to see what's called. That's why we watch the all 22, and we hope people come back and watch those, because we'll have those out tomorrow or Tuesday. And another thing too, I just see the chat. Everyone's bashing, a lot of people, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people are bashing the offensive line. Look, the offensive line to me in pass protection was not playing that bad until the second half, when the Giants were down and they knew the Giants were throwing and they could pin their ears back and they could run their exotic stunts. Honestly, I didn't see many like crazy blitzes from Brian Flores. I would love to see the blitz percentage. I do not think it was all that high. They were just sending 4, and they ended up getting pressure late. But there were a lot of third downs and second and longs where Daniel Jones had significant amount of time to throw. He had a solid pocket. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, that's complete. That's what it's what we'll see when we watch the tape. I mean, the pass protection was better than it was at any point during any of Jones's start last season. by a considerable margin. Obviously, we're not including the end of the game. Again, when the Giants are down 21-3 or whatever it is, you just pin your ears back. You don't commit to the run at all. You just give it up, and you know you can just rush the passer. It's very hard to pass protect in that situation.
And I'll also say I think we said on a podcast earlier this week that we expected a little bit more 12 personnel. Yep. I didn't expect that much 12 personnel, 12, 13. There was a lot of 12 and 13, and I'm guessing that was to keep. I'm sorry?
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm guessing that was to keep Brian Flores from getting to his exotic sub packages and to keep them in a bit of a heavier defensive personnel. But Giants couldn't run the ball out of 12. They really didn't do anything passing the football out of 12. And we've hardly saw Jalen Hyatt the entire game.
I was just going to say, that's what I was going to say. We didn't see Hyatt.
And I mean, I get it. Get Slayton out there. Like I'm fully on board with that, but not using Hyatt at all seems peculiar, especially since he had a relatively speaking, a pretty good camp. He was generating a lot of buzz, and he just wasn't out there at all.
Until the very end of camp, he was the wide receiver too, and Slayton was operating behind him, like clearly. And then that flipped at the last day. We mentioned that, I think, a podcast or two ago. What would that mean? Was it serious? It seems like, at least in this game, for this game plan, it was. And you talked about the uber conservative nature of Daboll at times. I thought that was very clear. Some of the fourth down plays, the way they did a lot of these design runs early for the quarterback, despite not finding any success on them and not really being put in a position where I feel like they had great, advantages in the box that led to, you have to call this here. I think it was more of, this is our design. And I just worry every time I see that, Nick, because I worry, is this Brian Daboll doing this because he has no confidence or trust in Jones to operate a drop back pass game? And if you watch that today, I don't see really how you can come to any other conclusion. Like I said before, and I stand by this, every drop back was like watching a car crash. His confidence level was nothing like I've ever seen from him, except for maybe that Tampa game years ago on Monday Night Football and the Miami game last year and Seattle and San Fran. And really all the times I've seen him recently. And that's what scares me, man, because if Daboll's not going to feel confident to even design a drop back pass game, he's like, I don't want to be embarrassed here. You get to a point where, again, it's just like I said before, dude, if this happens again and again, it's not even too many times at this point. It's like next game might be the last chance. Like if it's that bad, obviously you hope it improves, and it probably will. He's probably not going to be that bad. How could he be that bad again? But the leash has just gotten significantly shorter. And I think the leash changes entirely, by the way, for Daboll, which is what I want to get into next. Where are you at with Brian Daboll after this game in general, with the situation that the team is in right now?
I'm not trying to overreact, but I think even heading into this season, the seat is warm. You sat down, you're like, oh shit, someone must have just been sitting here because it's pretty warm. That's what the seat is. And with performances like this, it's only going to get warmer and warmer. And in a city like New York, that's going to get hot very fast. So yes, I do think
where are you at with it though? Like,
where am I personally?
Yeah, I don't care about the narrative. I want to know what your opinion is on this.
My opinion, look, I think if the season spirals out of control and the Giants end up winning like 2 or 3 games, Brian Daboll won't have a job at the end of the year. And that sucks because Brian Daboll never had his quarterback that I think Brian Daboll actually wanted. And I think Joe Schoen might be retained there. Maybe the relationship would save him, but I think if this goes sideways, Dan, I think he loses the locker room. Like we already saw like glimpses of that last year with Wink Martindale. I think if this defense is playing like 70, 75 snaps, you have your head coach being the play caller. He took the play calling away from his offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, and he's not moving the football. They're not going to be like, well, Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. That's why. No, they're going to blame the collective offense, and who's in charge of the collective offense? The head coach, Brian Daboll. So I think those decisions are going to lead the Giants to parting ways with Brian Daboll. That's what I think.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm curious, and maybe I can explain my side, and then I want to hear where you're at from this a different perspective. So I agree with you on everything you said. I think that's clear, and I think we'll probably be in that camp as well. We'll see how it goes. I'm saying from my perspective, I'm not as confident anymore that he gives them as much of an edge as I thought he did from a play calling and play design standpoint. Look, again, it's a different situation, especially today, on a day like today, where Jones was as incompetent. Incompetent, but also lacking that amount of confidence, the least confident we've ever seen him, versus Darnold, who came in with confidence, like, I can do this thing. This is in my system. I get one more chance. Oh, shit, it's clicking early. I'm throwing the ball well. I'm seeing the system well. And Darnold ran with it. But still, dude, to have one offense look like that and the other look like that when, like we said, until the game got ahead and the Giants' pass protection was not that bad, and to still have one look like that versus the other like that. And again, Vikings defense losing their best pass rusher by far last offseason and having questions in the secondary, in addition to a new defensive coordinator, we talked about it with Sean. The expectation was which quarterback's going to make the big mistake first. Both quarterbacks made plenty of mistakes in this game. Oh, Darnold, I guess only one or two big ones. But in the end, what really happened is one offense looked a lot more functional than the other. And at that point, you wonder, like, is Daboll still giving the edge that we said he would, because he did it with Josh Allen, and he still is the best Josh Allen's ever had. Like, Josh Allen hasn't reached those heights as a passer yet. He's come close. He runs a lot. But I don't know, man. I feel like if this goes sideways, I won't feel as, shit, we're going to lose Daboll. What are we going to do? Who's the next head coach? I'll kind of be like, I don't know if Daboll is what I thought he was.
No, I think that's exactly how you'd feel. I think that's how you should feel.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is the second consecutive year where everything fell apart after you gave a quarterback that you initially did not buy into. You did not pick up his fifth-year option. You gave him that extension, and everything just ended up falling apart after that. So, yeah, I mean, we're looking way into the future and prognosticating much football that needs to happen. But, yeah, the Giants suck this year, and it's hopeless, and they can't do anything on offense. Daboll's going to be the person to blame.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see what they do there. And from my perspective, I'm not as sold as I was that it'll be that big of a loss at that point. I'd hope that they can get another kind of quarterback developer, someone with a history. And I do think there is upside to Daboll if he had a chance to work with a great quarterback. But you know what, dude? You could probably say that about a lot of offensive minds in the NFL. If they had a chance to work with a great quarterback, their system worked, with the exception of Shane Waldron and people like that, who I just have no respect for and think call horrible games. And I'm so sad that he's going to bring down Caleb this whole year. Watch a lot of that game. It looked really bad. Like, their offense is so uncreative, and he's in so much heavy personnel. But it's what he did last year with Seattle too. But look, like, most guys on the level of like Daboll kind of need a quarterback, I would think. But again, this is all down the line. I was just curious to get your take. And then Shane, where are you at with Joe Schoen right now? Has anything changed? Because people are asking
I still think, look, Shane gave Daniel Jones that contract, and we said, like, look, you give him that contract, he needs to perform up to that contract. He needs to do something. He needs to take the developmental steps, because we knew at that time that he had slow eyes, and we understood that there were the situation. There wasn't a lot of options, but $40 million, that's a lot. Now, I like that they had the 2-year out within this contract, but nothing seems to be working. Now, with Shane, look, we've appreciated some of the moves that he's made, but it's going to come down to the decision. If you do part ways with Daboll, are you just going to keep the general manager, or are you going to clean house and try to bring in a whole new, like, just actually take the tourniquet out, let it bleed out, get a quarterback, and then rebuild the right way, instead of doing what the Giants have kind of done over the last decade? I'm very, I'm partial to that. You know, I appreciate that type of approach, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, man, this is way in the future. It doesn't feel good right now, though.
Yeah, it's still only one game.
Exactly.
Still only one game. Things can change fast in the NFL. This one doesn't feel as great right now, especially, like we said, it's different than last year, but things can change fast.
But like one thing with Shane, though, that we can evaluate throughout the season, even if the Giants are pathetic and pitiful, is how are those rookies that you brought in? How are those second-year guys, and how are those third-year guys? Are we getting anything from Thibodeau? Because it didn't seem like it in this game, right? Are we getting anything from Evan Neal? Is he going to see the football field? What about Dane Belton, who had a really nice play on the the first incomplete pass that Sam Darnold threw? Because dude was like, what, 10 of 10 for like 134 yards with a touchdown. Sam freaking Darnold, are you kidding me right now? So we'll have to see if any of those guys are developing. If they're not, geez, man, then that's just a really terrible look for the general manager.
Yeah, I mean, that's when things start to come in. I'm completely open at this point, obviously, to it.
Got to be open at this point, man.
You have to be open to it. I don't think generally, you know how I feel about this. I think when you keep changing things over, you put yourself in a really difficult position as a franchise to have success, because now you're changing scouts out, you're changing the whole process, you're bringing in different guys, and the past guys that you've drafted aren't helping you, and they become almost, meaningless to your roster at times, and really put you at a disadvantage from a roster building standpoint, long term and short term. But sometimes change has to be made. But I think when I think about the 30,000-foot view of the quarterback situation, Nick, again, like, he was in a very difficult spot. And I will agree that people are correct to say there are things he could have done differently. The first and most important being, and my brother made this point today, shout out Matt Schneier. And look, just a quick aside on Matt Schneier and a few other friends who texted me from the game today. Shout out Dan Egaro, Matt Schneier. It was really even more painful to be at that game today, which I completely understand. And I'll say this as well. My brother has a puppy. He left the game early to go back to that puppy, and I don't blame him at all. And it's disgusting and sad that the Giants have gotten us to this point as a fan base where it actually does make sense to not have to sit through that and to go home to the people that need you or whatever needs you. And they don't deserve it. They don't deserve you. When we were kids, Nick, we would get so mad at our dad if he wanted to leave to beat the traffic. My brother was like, nope, that's exactly where I was at. And it's deserved. Like, they put a disgusting product on the field today for the fan base, the people that pay the money for this team, and they put the same product on the field at the quarterback position. And so again, I like, he could have done it differently. He could have let him hit the free agent market, where again, I don't think he would have got any real interest on the free agent market. No one's effing paying for that type of asset. They had to re-sign him because he won the playoff game and he had his good game against the Vikings. And he really was phenomenal in that game. It was the flashes that he shows at times. But, regardless, Nick, here's the question. In any of the scenarios, right? Like, even if Joe Schoen had played it perfect with Jones, in any of the scenarios, are the Giants in any better position long-term from a quarterback standpoint right now? The answer is really no, unless you believe in Penix, unless you believe in Nix, McCarthy, or whoever was available when they took Deontay Banks last year. I can't remember. Levis was one of them, and he looked horrible. It's so funny, dude. I watched Levis, and I didn't own a single Titan fan. Didn't buy a roster a single Titan across 20 leagues, but little fantasy football there. You know what's funny? People used to say Daniel Jones' ceiling or his comp is what, like a Ryan Tannehill. I think Daniel Jones and Will Levis are the same quarterback, actually. I think that's the closest comp for who they are. Daniel Jones is faster and a better athlete, but I don't think he throws the football that much better than Will Levis. And I don't think either of them can really throw the forward pass on a
Levis have a bigger arm.
Levis has a better arm, but worse accuracy. But these days, Jones's accuracy is way down and has been for quite some time from a ball placement standpoint. So, I mean, it's tough right now, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I went a little
yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with that either.
It's
but
tough after games like this, dude. You're just like, I don't know, man.
We got some supers though we should get to. Yeah. So, JCNYC, thank you so much, man. He says, Miss Winks D, man. Honestly, well, no diddy. Darnold picking us apart. Honestly, I don't think our O-line did well against Vikings D. I don't get it. Yeah. Hey, I understand why people say it. That's why we're going to watch the tape. I still believe that there were good pockets in that first half and early, but it ended up looking really bad. And I'm sure there was frustration just boiling over for the Giants offense and their defense. And I do miss that aggressive nature from a defense. Dan and I both appreciated that. I'm hoping that the defense does stabilize. And I think Dan brought up a good point before. It wasn't as bad as probably it looks, right? Or it feels, because they did come up with some big stops. But there's going to be communication errors and there's going to be mistakes in this defense early on with the youth in the secondary and the nature of Shane Bowen's defense. So that is to be expected, although that doesn't really make it feel any better.
No, it definitely doesn't make you feel any better. Thank you so much for the super. We appreciate it for sure, JC.
And Neil believes didn't say anything. He just gave $1.99. Neil believes, we believe in you, man. Thank you so much. And then he actually gave $4.99 and asked the question. Thank you so much, buddy. Neil believes. He asked, or just says, Daniel Jones can't process, doesn't push the ball downfield, inaccurate and highly uninspiring. This is a joke, and he needs to go. Drew Aller in 2025. Oh, geez.
Actually seen a little bit of Drew Aller so far, new Drew Aller. Definitely looks a little bit more confident and looks like more of a natural feel with this new coordinator that Penn State has. Haven't seen this recent game, though. I saw the game before. The game before, he had a stick throw on one. It was one of their touchdowns. It was the middle of the field in breaker route. Any Penn State listening will know last week, the week before against West Virginia. And he stuck that ball, dude, and the receiver caught it and then ran in for a touchdown. It was the most NFL throw of any quarterback that's playing in college football right now. Like, the velocity, the ball placement, and the timing of it was, and he has those moments, but we also watched a lot of Theo Johnson this year, this past few months, and he was beyond bad on film last year.
Yeah, Drew Aller was terrible. But again, that's why you do this college football thing. And you can definitely progress. I wanted to bring one thing up too before we get to some more of the supers. Pat Leonard tweeted that he asked John Mara if he had any comment when John Mara was walking past him. And Pat said John Mara didn't break his stride or alter his gaze at all. He just walked directly past Pat Leonard. And I know it doesn't seem like, a big deal. Like, what would you expect from the owner? He's not going to address the media. But there is part of me that like just thinks of John Mara as the type of owner who, when you make him look like a fool, he takes that like and internalizes it, and like he'll be done with Daniel Jones if this doesn't turn around quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Oh, he kind of
backed him.
I was thinking of it the other way. I was thinking he'll be done with Daboll and Shane potentially.
Oh, well, yes. I think it could be like, I think being done with Daniel Jones could result in being done with those as well. But he was, as he should, the owner. He's not going to be like, yeah, Daniel Jones sucks. He's not going to say that before the season, but he was backing him and he's been gassing him up for 6 years saying we have done our best to ruin this kid. And, there's definitely merit to that argument. But after this, when you surrounded him with an infrastructure that is supposed to allow him to reach his potential, and he puts this on the field on Legends Night, you have everyone is in the building. You have your throwback jerseys on. Like, this is a really important night for the New York Giants. Yes. This is something that's really near and dear to John Mara's heart. You go out and you put that performance out there. Like, that's something that's
a great point, Nick, because that's the feel I got from the fans that I talked to who went to the game. What they said was, look, we didn't come into this season with big expectations. And I think every Giants fan felt that way. Our backs against the wall. Everybody was counting on us counting us out before this week. 6.5 over under in Vegas, not high at all. And he's like, I wasn't going into this expecting much. Like, it's not that I care about that. It's that it was a good day. It was beautiful out. It was sunny. We had a Legends. We were celebrating. It was good feeling being a Giants fan. They had the energy high before the game. The vibe was high as a fan from his perspective and from, I'm sure, every fan's perspective who was there. And then they did that. Like, that was the response to the high. You can't keep the high going. You drive it down and you bury it. And it's against as good of a matchup you could have drawn for your first week. At home against Minnesota that just lost their quarterback of 6 years, that has a new system on defense and missing pieces and lost its best pass rusher. Like, this was the spot for you to have energy to play well, but it was sapped when your quarterback looks like that. And I know there are other problems. Pass rush wasn't there, and especially once the game got out of hand. The O-line started to pass protect worse in the second half. They couldn't run the football, and they couldn't get the run game going. Secondary had breakdowns, which we expected. There were issues we expected, but the quarterback was unbelievably bad in this game individually. It was a train, as I said, and I'll say one more time, it's a car crash every time I watch him drop back, and I'm scared to watch the film, Nick, because I'm going to be like, what the hell was he doing in a lot of these spots? Like, the sack that he took before halftime, stepping up into that sack, man, that was one of the just like most mind-boggling moments I've seen on broadcast. I was like, dude, get some depth in the pocket. Take 2 hops backwards. There's no freaking reason to be doing what you're doing. And then you do step up into the freaking sack and just take it. Those are weird noises that I wish I could edit out. But like, now I can't because this is alive. I'm dealing with that and the consequences that will come surely from that. But it's what it felt like to me. It's like, what are you doing? Was it just your brain was spazzing out and you're just stepping twice and hopping into the sack? It's mind-boggling, man. I don't understand how he's regressed so much from a pocket field standpoint. This is his 6th year in the NFL, Nick, and his 3rd year in the same system. To be that unconfident looking in the same system for 3 years is insane. And maybe you just get to the point where you just stop thinking about it too much. And you just say, this guy's not good at the position. Stop thinking about it so much. Stop putting all this time to figure out what's happening. Why is it happening? The O-line this, the receivers that. But maybe if this, it's just where can't you get to the point where you just take a deep breath and you say, which I need to do right now, by the way, take a deep breath and just say, enough is enough. We don't need to put any more questions to this thing. He's not the guy. And it's as obvious as you can't even say the word obvious anymore because it doesn't do it justice.
No, 100%, man. It's right out in front of all of our faces. It's slapping us in the face. It's spitting
us over and over, spitting at us
in our face at this moment.
But it's week 2, Nick, and that's why fans are frustrated, and that's why rightfully so they deserve to be frustrated. But again, I don't know any scenario where even if he didn't pay Jones, dude, I don't know how they could get a quarterback right now unless you consider Penix again. Penix Nicks, who looked pretty god-awful in that game. God-awful at times, Nicks, as I predicted. Bet the under for that team total, Denver. Bet the Seahawks minus the spread, which, again, I got crushed at the end there. Bad hook, but Nicks was horrible in that game. Penix, we'll see what happens when Penix plays. We had our feelings on those guys. Now let's get to some supers.
Yeah, man. Christopher Bowden, thank you so much. He says 5 points is miffed. Danny Derps is cooked.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I love the nickname Danny Derps. I'm a big fan of the term derp. I actually used to call my younger brother a derp all the time. I spelled it with a U, though. It's actually my Xbox username. That's how cool I am. Jason Ruberman says, I think this was rock bottom for most people. Agreed. What would you like to see for the rest of the year? Because it's already over. I hope it's not already over. A lot of stuff can happen in the NFL, but it definitely does not feel good. I'm not trying to espouse positivity right now. There's really no positivity to be found, but I want to see development from the young guys. Really. I want to see another blue chip player arise. You know, I don't want it just to be Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas. There's enough high end, like former 5-star out of high school type of pedigree on this team that
Mhm.
you can see talented players manifest, even if the team sucks around them and the quarterback is trash. So like, that's something that I would like to see, Jason, but I don't know if we will.
Yeah, Jason, I definitely don't want to think it's already over, because if you're even considering that it might already be over in week 2, then there was a problem to begin with. And that's the realization you have to make. And that's what you have to admit to yourself. And we have to all, as fans, admit that to ourselves. If it's possible, again, without a season-ending injury, obviously, if you're the Jets last year, Aaron Rodgers went down, the season's over, but that's because of an injury. This is a no injury potential for a season to be wasted by week 2. So you ask yourself, what could they have done to upgrade this quarterback position this offseason? And again, we'll see what happens with Penix. We'll see what happens. I don't need to see what happens with Nix. I've made my mind up. I made my mind up earlier. It doesn't have an NFL arm. Not worried about that. Did have some good running ability, by the way, though. Nix is faster than I thought he would be, scrambling around in that late window game, Nick. But look, this is the position they're in. Now, what really happens is this. The reality of the situation, Nick, and we don't have to go back into this right now. It's so early for this. The fact that we even have to consider talking about this in week 2 is crazy, but you have to know at this point, when you win those games and those lost seasons like last year, you then lose your chance at Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And that's going to happen again if it happens again. And it'll be the tale of time. And those guys are not guarantees. But at least right now, if we had one of those guys, we could at least feel like maybe something can happen this season. What you said is true. That's what I'm looking for. Development of players. My only concern is, Nick, will Nabers' development be stymied by this situation that he's in?
Yeah, I was a little surprised that we didn't see a little bit more Nabers. And again, we have to watch the tape, and we're going to do that tomorrow and see if everything that we're saying now is accurate. Like, there could have been a lot of plays designed for Nabers, and the Vikings could have done something surprising to take them away. Like, Brian Daboll and Brian Flores are very familiar with each other. And that could be something that we could really discern when we watch the tape. Be like, yo, he was all over Brian Daboll's concepts, and that threw Daniel Jones. And maybe that's why, like, maybe Daniel Jones and the Giants were confident in their game plan, and Brian Flores changed it up so in such a unique manner that it was like all the game planning that they did prior to this matchup was out the window. That could be something that that actually happened too. I mean, I'm kind of grasping at straws now because he looked so bad, and that kind of bleeds me into Ronald. I always mess up the last name. Gagne.
Remember, it's like Eric Gagne. Remember the pitcher in baseball who had the closing record, and then he got roided the hell up and got busted for doing so much roids.
Baseball, roids, never. Ronald, thank you so much for the super. He says, Jones sucked ASS. But what was the game plan?
Family show.
Press bail and press under, and we hardly ever went deep to loosen them up. Yeah, that's what we're gonna have to look at on the tape to see exactly. I feel like Brian Daboll right now. Did you watch his post game presser? Just like every question that they throw at him, he's just like, "Yeah, we'll have to go back to tape." And it's just, I understand like where he's coming from, but as a fan, it is annoying because you want those, not like a sound bite, but you want something that you can just be like, and grab and grasp onto. But
you want the excuse. You want the reason for why it didn't happen the way we wanted to, and the reason to believe that it could happen a different way in another opportunity next week or the week after, whenever it may be, because of that one thing.
And just fandom, it can be a madness though, right? Because
that's what it is.
Ironically enough, the last thing you want is your coach to actually provide that excuse and throw people under the bus. You want him to do what Brian Daboll does, but in the moment, you want that excuse and you want to be satiated.
Sure. You want to feel like the things can change. Now back to what was the last thing he said there? Oh, about the game plan. Yeah. We'll have to see the tape, but I just think there's times where you can have a game plan, and if your quarterback does not look confident at all on every single drop back, that game plan is immediately out the window. I kind of think that's what happened here. Like when we saw those designed quarterback runs, the conservative play calling, I think we got to a point where Daboll was like, I don't trust Jones the way he looks today. And you can't bench him until the very end. Like I thought they should have benched him before that 1 minute and 10 quarter, down 28-6 with 90 seconds left or 70 seconds left in the game with an injury guarantee clause on his contract. But that's obvious. But earlier you can't, because that's the decision. If you bench him mid game, it's like, oh shit, Drew Lock is maybe starting next week.
I agree. That would have been rough. Jan 300 says, can we please just play good? It's frustrating. JJN 300, I agree, but we haven't played good. We haven't played well at all in a very long time. It seems like, at least consistently. 2022, we saw a little bit of it, right? But that kind of put us into a where we are now too.
Small stretches. We got moments in 2022. That was the big part
We
about it. You got such a high of beating the Vikings on the
yeah.
road. Like that was just such a good feeling. And the Colts, there were two really high moments, and the Titans win. So there was
Colts
like
were so bad at that point.
there were a lot of high moments of Baltimore win. It was a fun season. But I will say this,
Packers.
can we stop being so bad? It's crazy where we're at. I grew up, Nick, and during when we were kids, I'll be honest with you, I didn't openly do it, but when the Jets fans discussed how miserable their life was and how embarrassingly bad they were and had all the stats to prove it, we're talking about one of these seasons where they won one game, went 1-15. A part of me, like, again, didn't make fun of them out loud, but part of me was like, this is kind of funny and this is kind of makes me feel better about myself. It's like when you watch reality TV, you watch the people who watch like the Vanderpump or any of those types of shows, like they watch them because, and Jersey Shore is a great example. You watch them because it makes you feel better about yourself because you're not those people. No, you didn't know that. It's a big thing with reality TV.
I mean, I've never watched reality TV.
Oh, that's what it's a theory. I didn't make this theory up, and maybe it's offensive. I hope not. But and I watch Survivor, so I watch a reality TV show. But look, when you watch the dumb shows like the Floribama Shore and stuff, you're watching idiots, and it makes you feel better about yourself. Well, this is a similar situation to that one. And I lost my train of thought. But where did that start?
We're gonna go into Jake Schnetzer. Thank you so much. Says, can't watch right now, but it will later. A good quarterback solves a lot of problems. Let the front office draft a quarterback. Unfortunate to see, but it might be a blessing in disguise if we get a top pick. Thanks for the pod.
I mean, it's so early, though.
It is. Hey, but if we had that same mentality last year, maybe, we'd be in a different position right now. And I'm not like willing, just because Malik Nabers didn't have the game we all hoped. I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, Malik Nabers, like I still think he is him, as the kids say.
Nothing to do. He did nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong. But people are like, oh, it's like not a wasted pick. No one has insinuated that, but it's just like, because we didn't get the quarterback, which I completely understand. I still think Malik Nabers, like, we're going to look back at this and be like, dude, this is a guy, bro. And whoever is the future quarterback is going to be blessed to have him there. Yeah, but I was surprised that we didn't get to see more of him be him. That's not a referendum on him. Yeah. That was more just the ineptitude of the offense.
I'm not that surprised considering what we saw early in the game. I think if you asked me after the first series, I would have told you it's not going to be a big Neighbors day because this quarterback is shocked.
Yeah, that 12, like just using someone and Theo Johnson like that, he looked rough.
That's the thing, dude. Like you lose 40-0 to Dallas last year in week 1 with all the hype that you had, and you come back and lose 28-6 or whatever the final score was in this game against a middling team like the Vikings, who were projected for around the same win total as you. It's what I was saying before. It's rock bottom. It's what I experienced. Like what's those Jets fans experience when I was friends with them and they were kids. The Giants are now the Jets. They're back to it. The Giants are now the Jets. We are officially the Jets now. We're a laughing stock. We're doing embarrassing things like losing week 1 40-0 last year, like losing like this at home against the Vikings. We have become the embarrassment. People who are watching today on Red Zone are laughing at that Jones pick 6. They're like, it's another one. Remember the preseason? They put it on SportsCenter. We saw that. They won against Houston. We saw that. And now he did this again. Oh, it's Jones. It's a punchline. We're the punching bag team now. We just never were when I was a kid, dude. This just wasn't the case. Like,
I would argue that we've been that for a while, basically since 2019. We've been that team. So. I mean, we have. The reason why I don't think we're the Jets is because the Jets have this. There's an argument to be had that we're worse than the Jets because the Jets are historically inept. The Jets have always sucked. They've always been the laughingstock. They've always been that team that you just described. The Giants have not. The Giants are actually a franchise with a lot of historical significance to the NFL. And today we were celebrating that. And that's what was rewarded by the Giants team. And this is what the Giants team provided, all of those famous New York Giants, bro, and the Legends Day and all of that, bro. It was all right there today. And our team went out there and played like crap. I can argue that is worse than being like the Jets because we've lost.
We got to experience the 2 Super Bowls. I mean,
100%. Yeah. That I'm not removing, but we've lost what we used to be, and we have to regain that identity. And it's just been a while now at this point. But I'm going to move on now because we got a lot of supers we got to get to. Jake Andrews, opinions on the secondary, late arrival. So sorry if already addressed. Look, the tape is going to tell us a lot about the secondary, but it didn't seem like the Giants had many answers. Zone, man coverage. Anytime Justin Jefferson was one-on-one, he was getting targeted. They were trying to help Deontay Banks, the Giants. I want to see how. But outside the numbers, Sam Darnold was just torching the Giants. It didn't matter near hash, far hash. It really And dude, you really saw Sam Darnold's arm too. Like he has a freaking cannon on him, and he looked really really adept passing the football. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see with the tape with that. But it wasn't great off of just the broadcast version.
I would say that we expected the Giants secondary to take some time, to be some communication there, to be some just getting used to the system. And they have weapons. Jordan Addison can get open. Justin Jefferson can get open. Sam Darnold's playing really confidently in the system, or at least he was today. That's the thing. That's where we find out. Can Darnold keep this up? If not, how much of it was on us, was on the Giants?
Matt Peliquin, thank you so much, said, I'm almost apathetic at this point. Yeah.
I am too, to be honest. Yeah.
But you know what? Sunday's going to roll around next week, and I'm going to be like, let's see if they can bounce back. Let's see, and then they're going to take a crap on my face again, and I'm not going to feel that way anymore. Christian Deschure, I don't know. Thank you so much, Christian. Says, be honest about Shane. He has been absolutely terrible. He completely blew the 5th and 7th overall picks. And when you look at the first 2 drafts overall, he hasn't added a single impact player.
Yeah, I mean, thus far, you would be correct, Christian.
Depends on what you mean by impact. Like, is Wandale an impact player? I can make an argument that he is.
No,
Depends.
I would
He's
not.
not a blue chip player. He's a good football player.
I think he could be an impact player in the right situation, but he's not an impact player right now for what the Giants are at as a passing game, for where they're at. They can't use him like an impact player. There's no competence right now in the Giants passing game. And it's almost unusable for all 4. Nabers did the best he could do today. Wandale did the best he could do today. Hyatt didn't play, and Slayton was on the field and didn't get many opportunities either. This was a total collapse by the quarterback position.
Yeah.
But as far as Shane goes, like, these guys aren't panning out right now. So I would say he's done some good process things, right? He's made some good trades. The process is there. The results are just not there. So, and I'm not ready to give up on Kayvon yet as a blown pick.
Neither am I, but it is kind of nuts that if the Jets just didn't go with Sauce Gardner and the Texans go with Derek Stingley Jr., who a lot of people did not have both Sauce and Stingley going in the top 5 that year in their pre-draft mocks, for whatever that's worth. The Giants, I think, would have took Stingley and they would have took Sauce. They would have took one of those two, and the feeling of the class would be a lot different, I think. And that sucks because I do like Kayvon Thibodeau, but those players are, it seems like, significantly better than those 2 players right now.
Sure. Right now,
those 2 players are significantly better than what Kayvon has put out there, at least. And I think the Giants probably would have took Evan Neal at 7, though, because they really needed that right tackle.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Nick. It's, as we go back to this discussion, this debate about Shane, this is big question here is be honest about Shane. Then we've talked about Daboll earlier. We talked about their hot seat. There's a level of rigid. I'm trying to think of the word.
Rigidity.
I guess rigidity, stubbornness. Rigidity just didn't sound like a real word, so I didn't want to do it. But I guess it is a word. It just sounds kind of weird. I'm not going to use it again. To how they, approach this roster building, Nick, because we heard them earlier. Oh, is it possible for Evan Neal to play some guard? No, he's our tackle. Oh, is it possible for Josh Azudu to play some guard? No, he's our tackle. We're training him at tackle. And so I think, fourth quarter, you're down 28-6. There's 70 seconds left. Your starting quarterback has a $25 million dollar injury guarantee. If he gets a season-ending injury and can't pass his March physical, you've destroyed your next season's cap because you're adding $25 million extra for this quarterback. He's already had 2 season-ending injuries, 2 neck injuries. You put him back on the field, down 28-6, because he needs to get some valuable reps to improve the timing of this offense. That's your priority at that point. That's a stubbornness. That's a rigidity. That's not great. Like, I'm not looking up to that. I don't view that as something that's good. I don't view that as something that's smart. No, of course we use Adoree on punt returns again. What do I know I'm right. It's not, it just doesn't feel like a winning play, plus EV move to put Daniel on the field there.
I think it depends, man. They're not looking like Brian Daboll right now isn't thinking maybe the same things that Joe Schoen is thinking this early in the season. Like, we're going to bench Daniel Jones because of that injury guarantee. He's like, we need to see something from Daniel
but
Jones.
I don't mean bench for bench. I mean, in the fourth quarter with 70 seconds left.
No, I know. Even then, though. Even then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even then you're saying
that's what I think Brian Daboll. And Brian Daboll's that old school coach. Like, I think that's how he was approaching that. And if he did bench Drew Lock and Drew Lock looked good, that's a whole nother thing. And I don't want him to not do that because of that. Because if Drew Lock is better for this team, start Drew Lock over Daniel Jones. Like, we should already have been at that point, right? I am just not sold that Drew Lock is.
I'm not either. But what would the percentage you would be if you had to guess right now on if we'll see Drew Lock play at all this year for the Giants?
A percentage? I mean, with injuries factored in, I would say like a 60%.
Not for injuries.
Okay, not for injuries. 40%.
Okay. And I don't know if we would have felt that way before this game.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
The injury guarantee makes it even more, probably,
Yeah.
actually. So, but yeah, it's tough, man. Let's go to Supernaut 888. Thank you so much. Kind of disappointed there's no cuss-filled Dan rant.
Told you, I'm
Appreciate
not going to force rants. I do appreciate you donating. I
that
appreciate
baby rant there.
doing the work. We got a little small type
Your
of
blood pressure spiked.
Blood pressure spiked briefly.
You were at like 150 over 80, maybe.
Yeah, not my peak. But look, we're not going to force rants here. Rants have to be natural for them to have value. And like Nick said a little bit earlier, there's a little bit of apathy right now going on right now. I don't feel good about this feeling. It's like when I used to be in college and studying for finals, and the only time I ever took Adderall, Nick, and I would like crank out these crazy good study days. But when I was done, I would feel so like indifferent. That's how that was my come down off of that, improver for your studying, whatever you want to call Adderall. I don't know, but some people really need it. But that's how I felt about this game. Apathy, indifferent.
Gianelli says, was waiting for your reactions all day. Makes it a little better. Keep it up. You guys are the best, man. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gianelli. Yeah, I wish we had a little bit more spice to us right now, but I think Dan nailed it before, as he is currently possibly dying, choking on something. I'm not sure what's going on with him. But yeah, it is one of those things. It's just like a punch to the gut where you're just like, oh man, you just kind of want to curl up and be like, it's gonna be like this again. Another year of this. I got to go through and watch this team again. Oh my God. I don't want to deal with that shit, dude. It's so depressing.
It's so depressing. It's really depressing for this fact that we have a podcast too about this team. We just got to hope that it improves, and it will. Like, again, it's not going to look as bad as it looked today because the Giants won't accept that. If it looks like that again, they'll bench Jones and they'll go to Locke. And if it continues to look like that with Locke, they'll go to DeVito, and then they'll go back to Jones in a cycle of 4 quarterbacks until they can get something competent. You have to put something on the field. Like, you can't put this on the field ever again.
And at this point, I just want a quarterback who can run the system, because it didn't even appear like Jones could do that today.
Jones could not run the system today.
And I think Jones would be better.
I think Jones is much better than what he was today.
Yes.
But that's the crux of Jones. Like, of course, he's much better than what he was today, but he'll have some random good games occasionally in his career. But then he'll also have games like this, out of nowhere. And these will happen far too frequently. Not to this extent, but they'll happen. Some version of this will happen far too frequently in the middle of a good stretch. You'll get a good stretch, a game here, a game there, start to stack a little. Bang, it's back to square one. It's that 3-7-1 stretch of 2022 when the Giants won only 3 of 11 total games, and he was not throwing the football, and they were running Barkley 32 times a game because they couldn't trust him to throw the football. There's just such a level of a lacking of trust, I feel like, that Daboll and Kafka have for his ability to operate a drop back pass game. So they've done all these things. They've put him in a system where he's running bootleg, and they're running zone read, and they're giving him options that he's just quick hitting. And they've tried everything. Today, they tried to design quarterback runs. They try all sorts of things, Nick, but in the end, all these things are doing the same thing. They're all doing different. They're all approaching in a different way, but the goal is the same: to hide his inability to operate a drop back passing game. Move him off the spot on a bootleg. Maybe he can hit a throw. That's not acceptable. You need to develop as a drop back passer. You need to show a level of competency, or you're not on the field, and we're done with it at this point. And he will be better. And then we'll, we got to give him more time because look, today he looked competent doing it. The consistency has to happen. It has to. We're tired of it. It's over. Get your shit together and operate a drop back passing game like a normal starting quarterback, or you don't belong to start on any team, let alone this team. I don't care who's behind you. DeVito, Locke, it doesn't matter. Show level of competency, because that was not fun to watch today, Nick. And it was disgusting. And it's just mind-boggling and mind-boiling and so frustrating, man. I guess that's a little bit of a rant, but
it was very well said, though. I think you're spot on with your assessment. Gil Martinez, thank you so much, says or asks, is it time to admit Daboll is not the quarterback god we all thought he would be? Every year we get weapons and they go ghost. Where was number 0 and number 5? Worst thing to happen to the regime was 2022. Being a fan of this team is exhausting.
It's very exhausting to be a fan of this team. And, a case can definitely be made that winning that playoff game was not good for the Giants long-term, because it required them, or I don't want to say required them, it led them in the direction of building and moving forward with the core of Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. It's spilled milk at this point. We can't go back in time and change that. As far as where we're 0 and 5 today, again, don't think they had their best games. Also don't think they were in a good situation. Giants were down 14-3 early. Then it was even worse. They had no real pass rushing opportunities. The Vikings took the air out of the ball in the second half. Daboll one, that's the real one. That's the scary one. Because if Daboll's not the QB guy we thought he could be, then he doesn't really offer as much value long-term to me as he did 2 years ago, even this summer when I made cases for him. And I'm at a different point with him than I've ever been because I'm not longer sure with Daboll, at least that he gives us an advantage.
Damn, dude. Yeah, man.
I don't know how we could be sure that he gives us an advantage at this point.
No, it's tough, man. Look, and I think Daboll put such a burden on himself by taking the play. Like, I understand it and bet on yourself. And if you think that you can do a better job than your offensive coordinator, but if they suck and it is because of the court, like we were saying earlier, it's all going to be on you. And that could lead him to getting fired, like that decision. Because there is no like, oh, well, let's just get rid of Mike Kafka. Like that sacrificial lamb. There is no sacrificial lamb. You're the sacrificial lamb now on the offense.
Great point. Such
if you don't make this quarterback work. Christine,
excellent point.
My computer, thanks, man. My computer's blowing up a little bit, by the way, so apologies for that. Christine said, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for all you guys do. Truly enjoy both of you. Thank you for the donation, Christine.
Appreciate
that. Red Pepper Dave says, all right. There we go. I love this team, but I hate bad football more. And the Giants are bad, which makes me have a love-hate relationship with this team. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, again, I don't think it's going to be as bad as it looked today. I want to hope that. I want to have that hope, Nick. I think Jones will get more confident. I hope, but I don't know though, because there's no real reason for him to be looking like he did today from a confidence standpoint, right? It's his third year in the system. He should know all the verbiage inside out. I know he just got injured, but it's not like, oh my God, I haven't played football in 2.5 years. Oh, Sonny, I used to play this game. It was a half year off of football. You've been playing forever. Kyler Murray came back last year after a half year and got it back. Like millions of people do this all the time. It's not really a fair excuse. It's how the hell could you look so skittish your third year in a system, your 6th year in the NFL? So I don't know if there's an answer to that. That's a good answer for us. I want to, again, just hope that he needs more time, I guess.
John Carolly. John, what's going on, buddy? How you doing? Says, Jones missed another free rusher. I'm ready to see Locke. I need something different than what
Jones is not good at identifying free rushers and sliding protections. I'm not even sure it's his responsibility. 2 years ago, Mike Kafka went on to Spaces and said it's not his responsibility, and he's in year 6, and that's still not a responsibility for him. That's a nightmare in its own right, and that's a disaster in its own right. But then when we see this consistent shit like we've seen last year, Seahawks free rusher ruins a series. This year, another free rusher. How could it have happened? I couldn't have seen this coming. Takes a sack, and you'll hear from some fans, the O-line. Give yourself a break and understand that that's not the O-line. That's on the quarterback at that point, or the play caller, or the center for setting the protection. But it's not on the O-line. Like the O-line didn't miss a block. The team, the entire missed that this guy was going to come free.
Yeah, I would have to watch that again, but it seems like Jones just didn't throw hot when he should have.
Right,
because he was an accounted for. It was an accounted for free rusher if the linebacker blitzed. When you saw how the protection was set up, and I don't know if it wasn't communicated or whatnot, but let's answer the second part of John's question.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
You guys, basically, he asks, when should we move to Locke?
So I'll answer this first. I think I've said it a few times this pod and other questions, but to me, it's if he looks, there are different ways where you can move to Locke. One is if he looks like this again next week, even just 2 in a row, it's time. I don't know how many more games you need to see like this, but again, this is unlikely. He probably won't look this, lacking this amount of confidence next week, Nick. So if he looks better next week, you stick with him. And I still think you turn to Locke when, they're out of contention and Jones injury guarantee could play a role.
I agree. Gil Martinez also says, everyone here like the stream. You're welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I forgot to ask for likes. Please click like. If you're watching this show right now, you could hear it in my voice. I lost my voice last night. I have a little bit of a sore throat. That was what was happening before when I had that little coughing attack, Nick. I feel like I've had a scratchy throat the entire pod. I was at an amazing concert. Pier 17. Joe Russo's Almost Dead. Phenomenal show. But a lot of sing-alongs, so I lost my voice.
Oh, cool, man. That's good. Ronald also says,
have some fun. Giants aren't doing it for us.
No, you need to have fun somehow, right? Ronald says, hear me out here. Tank for Belichick. Daboll demoted to OC. Brady comes out of the boat for 2 years as a bridge quarterback. About 99% kidding, 1% serious. Absolutely love it, Ronald.
No, yeah, and this will come up probably, by the way, since we might be in another one of these seasons, Nick. But the Giants can't tank, and they won't tank. Tanking is not a thing in the NFL. A team did try it, the Dolphins, a few years ago. They got caught by the NFL, busted, and they lost a first-round pick. From my understanding, the NFL wanted to make an example of the Dolphins, and if this happens again, the next team will be made an even greater example of. So that is not something you expect to happen.
And you best believe John Mara would never go along with something like that.
Would never go along with something like that. That's for sure. And you can. Those guys are paid to do a job. They need to play for their careers. They need to play for their families. You just have to kind of hope, to be honest, that the Patriots don't miss that field goal. And you don't have to hope that. It's fine. Do whatever you want to do as a fan. I'm never going to tell anyone how to fan. But it goes both ways, right? I'm not going to tell you how to fan, but to me, if I don't want to be super thrilled when DeVito goes on a 3-game winning streak and it loses you one of those choices at a quarterback, I'm not going to be super thrilled. And I probably won't ever be bullied into feeling like I'm a fake fan because I want to win these games or I'm not totally thrilled with the wins.
All right. Rohan Shah says, my 4-year-old daughter has a vocab that's almost as impressive as Nick's. I think that's a compliment, so thank you. She doesn't say touchdown, though. Wife says that's because the Giants never score. Yeah, touchdown is going to be a
Rohan's got jokes tonight. What a super chat, Rohan. That was hilarious. You got a little, that was a good one. She doesn't say touchdown, though, because despite her great vocabulary, the Giants don't score those, so she never hears those.
Why would she know touchdown, right? That is just out of her lexicon for sure. Thank you so much, Rohan. Chris Carter said, and thank you so much. 1/2 of football. That's all I got for the 24 season. I respect the work you guys do, and I'm sorry. You have to do this for another 16 weeks. See you in April. Chris, I know. Yeah. Hopefully the Giants can bring you back in, but I can't really give you any hope. It should inspire you.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for the donation. I am going to make my pitch for you guys to stay with us. But if you want to leave until April, I'm not going to be the one who says I don't understand that entirely. Just if you do stay with us, you're going to get some interesting content. You're going to get film breakdowns. You're going to get how we watch the development of Nabers. You're going to get to learn about this roster because regardless of what happens in April and what happens between now and April, and then what if Giants eventually do in April, you need to know about the rest of this roster because no matter who they can't get one single player that's going to turn this around. Now they can if they get the right quarterback, but he'll need some pieces to be there with him. So let's see what happens. Thank you, though, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Jake Andrews, who says, the scary thing to me is all the design runs we saw for Jones. First game back, I get having concerns about Jones' value without his legs, but is it worth the risk? They don't even work anymore.
Well, they didn't work today. They might work again, Jake. The Jones design rushes could come back and make a thing in the second half season. Blocking and the timing wasn't great today. Look, this is who he is. And Nick and I said this in the offseason. If we're doing the Jones experiment again, we got to let him run because he doesn't offer that much more on a football field on a consistent basis. Again, I have respect for how he throws his dig routes. He threw another pretty good one today in that intermediate middle on an in-breaker to Malik Nabers behind him, but where it's supposed to be back shoulder with velocity. But he doesn't throw accurately in any really other area of the field. And this is consistent with the tape. You can go back and watch. Don't cry whine at me. Go watch yourself and come back with work and I'll debate it. But he hasn't been an accurate ball placement quarterback for any level but that intermediate dig. So you got to let him run. It's one of the things he does well. Otherwise, why is he on the field is how I look at it, Nick. And I know there's a risk with the injury guarantee.
There absolutely is a risk, but you need to maximize your ability to be on the football field with the quarter, and you're already limited in that regard. So he's supposed to help you there, and we'll see. But I get the concerns. Mark Caballero 1, thank you so much for the donation, asks, any chance he is just mentally shell-shocked, speaking on Daniel Jones? The pressure of having to be great to keep his job is getting to him. I think he just might be a head case at this point. Man, like Daniel Jones' back has been up against the wall so many times in his career. And it's not like he's risen to the occasion other than the 2022 season when he really needed to seize that moment. And he did, to his credit. But I mean, I'm sure it's getting to him to some degree. We're all human, right? I also think that he's not the quarterback that a lot of Giant fans believe that he was. And living up to that is frankly unrealistic.
That's a great way to look at it, Nick, because there's two sides to it. The side that you touched on, which is important to note, which is he never really is what some fans think he can be, or if everything was right or this and that. I've seen moments of it. I still believe in Jones. he never really had that. The tape has been very clear and evident of that for a really long period of time. And that tape dates back to Duke too. You can, look at it any way you want, but there's really some, objective ways to look at it. And if when you look at it through the objective lens, he's not what you thought. But the other side of it is, I don't think it's at any chance he's just mentally shell-shocked, Mark and Nick. I think it's, how the hell could anyone with their own two eyes, if they know any semblance of football, watch today and be like, leaning in that direction that, yes, he looked mentally shell-shocked out there. That was the most shell-shocked I've seen a quarterback since him in the Tampa Bay game from like 2020 Monday Night Football. It's the last time I've seen a quarterback so shell-shocked to be back there. Maybe some of the Jake Fromm stuff I'm blacking out of the memory.
You forgot Jaron Hall against Green Bay last year.
No, I'm talking about a Giants quarterback.
Okay, yeah.
Jake Fromm. Yeah, it might be Jake Fromm, but that looked as shell-shocked. So yeah, I think it's a pressure thing. I think it's I think he just doesn't trust his offensive line at this point, too, no matter what they actually put on tape, Nick. Again, we have to watch the tape, but we think they held up in the first half in pass protection from what we saw. But I don't think he has the trust level for that anymore. And it's forcing him to speed up his process. Didn't he look so sped up today, dude? Like so unnaturally, uncomfortably sped up.
Yes. 100%. 100%. It didn't seem like anything was aligned. Eyes, feet, and when he would throw, he wasn't really aligned to his target, which led to some of the inaccuracies I think we saw. Andrew Mossberg says, at least we got the Yanks, Knicks, and Rangers. Yeah, so some New York fans do. Others don't. Others are fans of the other teams in New York. But yes, that's a consolation for sure. Benjamin Gold says, love you guys. Discuss Shane's drafting. I'm hoping, Benjamin, that it can be rectified a little bit. But again, we've touched on it throughout the stream. We'll have to wait and see. Darius Moose had an interception. That was kind of cool, right?
Yep. Yeah, it was.
And then we have just a donation from Nick Babas. Thank you so much, Nick. Fire Cashman. I'm guessing he might not agree with Benjamin's or Andrew's assessment about the Yanks. Yes, Fire Cashman, thank you so much for your donation. And then the last one by HB Greg. HB Greg, thank you so much. He says, this podcast is the only reason I still follow the Giants these days. Best out of all the pods I follow. Thank you so much, HB Greg. Does Daboll want one of the players to get hurt at the end of games? This same every season, basically, is what he's saying.
No, I don't think he obviously doesn't want anyone to get hurt. But I think what Nick said is true. He nailed it. He's an old school coach. He learned under Belichick and Saban at Alabama. And those old school coaches don't believe in end of the game. Let's take our players out if the game's over. They say we fight till the very last whistle. We want to put something positive on tape. Normally, I don't really care. I don't like that effort because personally, I don't like playing players when the game's out of hand and the game's decided because they could get injured and it could impact your future success. But in this scenario with Daniel Jones, that's taken to a whole nother level for me, Nick, because he has a I need to reiterate this for those who may not know. He has a $25 million injury guarantee, masterfully crafted by his agent. It's unbelievable the leverage that his agent had over Joe Schoen, which again is a fair knock on Joe Schoen to be that poor in those contract negotiations. But again, he found a way to get a $25 million injury guarantee in this contract. So if Jones doesn't pass his March physical and has another season-ending injury, which would be his third in 6 years, that's a high percentage. He's done it one of every 3 seasons so far, I believe. The Giants are kind of effed because that's $25 million against the cap plus his $21 million for next year. So they'll be paying, or plus his 20 something. They'll be playing something close to $45 to $50 million for Jones to be just not on the roster and injured next year. So playing him with 70 seconds left, it's a terrible decision from a logical standpoint.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with what you said there. I also understand what Daboll is attempting to do, and it does seem like this is just what Daboll is doing so much, but the reason why it seems that way is because he's been put in this position so frequently that the Giants suck so bad that he's trying to get the offense going for something positive, for something to build on heading into next game and practice tomorrow and all of that. And it's just that the team sucks so bad that it just seems like this is what he always does. Most teams don't suck this bad, Most teams don't have to find themselves in that situation too frequently. And we have one more super back from John coming back. Thank you so much. John says, Dan, does bacon and ham belong in a penne vodka sauce? Here in Arizona, they add it, and I don't like it. Thanks, guys. Love listening. John's a Arizona guy, and when I was out there, him and I texted. We never got to meet up, but yeah. So what are your thoughts on the bacon and ham? Me personally, I know he's asking you, Dan. I'm an Italian, and this might be sacrilegious. Do it. I don't care.
I don't care either.
Like I think it would enhance it. And I know some Italians, I know a lot of Italians, grew up, in a very Italian neighborhood who would probably scoff at me saying it. But for me, I think that would enhance it. It doesn't all need to be pure, authentic Italian. There's room for that. But then if you want to spice it up, you know what, man, I want some freaking pork in my damn penne vodka. Throw it in there. I'm cool with that. So me, John, if you were asking me, which you did not, I said go for it, brother.
Well,
and why are you asking Dan and not the Italian? That's a whole other.
Yeah, that's offensive in its own right. I think you're making a good existential point, though. It's like it's kind of goes back to the stable thing with the punt returns of Adoree and playing Daniel Jones in a blowout loss and with 70 seconds left. The rules say, the etiquette says you don't put bacon and ham in a vodka sauce. It's bad etiquette. But if it's going to taste better, which you can stand to say it would, screw etiquette. Let's go for the best tasting thing. Now, I think when it comes down to vodka sauce, anything you're getting in Arizona is probably not up to standard. Homemade vodka sauce is really important. It's really important. Like from each place you get it, it tastes different. And I have a lot of different vodka stuff. Shout out, by the way, Caniglio's by me, Morristown. My God, their vodka sauce is really good. They do a vodka parm hero and a vodka meatball hero. My God, those are good to go along with their pizzas. So, yeah, I think it comes down to the sauce factor. But, yeah, I'm with you on that. I like the way you framed it.
Thanks, man. And, John, I'm just messing with you, bro. Always appreciate talking shop with you. And, yeah, Dan, that's all the supers that we have.
Okay. I think it's a good place to wrap there. Look.
We got one more. Just came in as I said that.
Okay. Let's do one more.
Greg. Do we need an updated prediction video after this game? Oh, yeah. I would love that. I was thinking about it the entire game. When the Giants went down 14-3 and they couldn't do anything on offense, I was like, I'm going to look like such an asshole after this.
Yeah, luckily I said 7 and not 8, but I don't feel confident with 7 at this point either. But it's the Giants, Nick, so you know what'll happen. It'll be just like last year. They'll be staring down the first pick. You'll see it on Tankathon. Giants with the 1, Giants with the 2. Last year was always the 2 because Carolina was always in the 1. And then they'll win 3 games in a row, and they'll be back where they were.
They'll win 3 games in a row, and then they'll lose one that they should win, and then they'll go and pull off some upset, and then they'll put themselves at like 5 wins or something, and then at like the 6th or 7th pick again, and whatever.
And I don't want to even get down this direction just yet or right now at all, but I already feel like they could be in a position where they're drafting into this quarterback class, and the class you want to be in is going to be 2026. The guys that are going to be in there in 2026, and that's a scary thing to think about. There's some more intriguing guys now, like Quinn Ewers has looked like he's taken some steps, playing more confidently. I like Nussmeier, I like Moss to an extent, but dude, if you look at that 2026 class, some of the athletes, some of the arm talent, some of the pure physical prospects that might be in that class, it's a class that I kind of want to be in for the Giants, and I don't think it's going to happen because I think next year it's a lock they draft quarterback. But it is what it is. We're looking too far ahead right now.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming to the commiseration station. I'm hoping that we don't have to do this too frequently. We'll always do the live post-game show, but I'm hoping we don't have to make it a commiseration station every week. But it seems like we may. I don't know.
Hopefully not. Have a great rest of your night. Thanks for coming commiserate with us, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.